All right, everybody. Check, radio check. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy schedules to hop on our weekly call. I wanted to circle back to something that it's a tool, it's a calculator. It works sort of in concert with some of my other tools, Retirement Analyzer, and I haven't used this in a while. There's a system that me and Keith and Caitlin use, and a lot of the advisors that we teach, train, and support use. It's called Money Tracks or Circle of Wealth. And Circle of Wealth has been instrumental in helping me to convey concepts, right? Helping me to convey ideas, thoughts, because quite often we get inundated with information, and by itself, the information can seem absolutely correct, but on a larger scale, it maybe is a little either misleading or incomplete. So I thought it would be good. It's going to be a short call today, so I appreciate everybody being on this call. But I also want to invite you to continue to join us because we're going to build on these conversations. So they might seem very simple and very rudimentary, but at their core, what I found is people are making decisions, like I said, based on either misinformation or partial information or just completely inaccurate information. So, without further ado, the four questions we're going to go through, it's the four most important financial questions everyone needs to know. And so again, this is Money Tracks. This is a system. I am a master mentor with Money Tracks. Been using this with clients for over 10 years. And sometimes I'll gravitate into it. And sometimes even though I may not have shown a client some of the detailed information, I have the ability to go into it. And really there's a component here that we term spending game, and it's very advanced, and it's not really designed to be really a tool that I use with clients, but it really helps me to support when I'm making recommendations and suggestions that I've been thorough and taken a lot of things into consideration. So, we'll build on these four questions, and then, these four questions you'll see by the time we're done will help us to take to the next step, which is the financial GPS. And we'll start to talk about that, maybe even do, I was talking to Caitlin and Keith, maybe even do sort of a mock test case so you can see if you'd like to engage in something like this, we can help you. So the first question, and again, it might seem rudimentary, but let's think about what they're saying, right? Rate of return. And I see a lot of people get really wrapped around the axle with rate of return. So do you know the rate of return you need to earn on your savings and your investment dollars to be able to live in the future like you live today, adjusted for inflation, and have enough money to last your entire life expectancy? And so that is a mouthful right there. And when you think about it, this is why a lot of times, and people that are trying, they say, I can do that myself. Why am I paying that fee? I got this. Or, I hopped online and used a calculator, and all those tools and comments, right? I don't really have an opinion one way or another, other than that they're probably all inaccurate, right? And the reason is because forecasting, with the number of variables that can affect our future, is very, very difficult. Nobody has a crystal ball. Even me, I take a very, wide approach towards how we approach the future. And one of the areas, if you've ever been on a call with me as I go through some of the specifics on somebody's portfolio, is I have a phrase that I say, which is averages lie, right? And you go, well, what do you mean by that? And I go, because everybody will, when I'm doing classes and workshops, that they'll inherently, people will listen to the person that comes in to talk to them about their 401k. And then they give them those statements, and they go, here's our performance of all of our options, right? And they'll list, okay, here's our 3-year average, 5-year average, 10-year average since inception. And inherently, what everybody does is they'll circle, 3 or 4 or 5 of those and say, okay, I'm diversified. I picked amongst these different things, and here's the averages. And different financial institutions use different averages. So the rate of return, right, on the surface, I can get 8%. Okay, what kind of risk is involved there? Right. And then, are they using arithmetic means with their averages or geometric means? It's a little bit more technical than I wanted to get into today. But although this question seems very rudimentary, it is a very important factor. And it really does help us to understand the amount of risks that we're looking at as we forecast into the future. So that's question number one. And again, it's like this is going to be a short call because you go, well, duh, but it's deeper than duh, right? Is really what I'm trying to say. All right, amount to save. Do you know how much you need to be saving on a monthly or annual basis to accumulate enough money by retirement to live on at the same standard of living as you enjoy today? And this one I often will speak to folks, and when they're early in their careers, 30s, 40s, I'll say, hey, when do you want to retire? And it's amazing. Everybody's like, I want to retire at 50, 55. But when you're 50, 55, and I talk to you, they're like, well, maybe if I can get done by 62, 65, 67, maybe I'll even wait till 70. And think about, and again, everybody's circumstances are different, but, what's your family's health history, longevity? Do you personally have any health issues, or do you have a propensity to have a long life, right? Your family tree shows that people, you have some centurions in your family tree. So if any of those things are important, and if you go to life expectancy, which is, if it's different for men than it is for women, it's different than singles than it is for couples, right? If we retire, and let's just hypothetically say we want to retire at 65, right? We haven't fully maybe gotten to our full retirement age and collecting Social Security. And we say, I want to hang up my cleats for 30 years because my life expectancy is saying for a married couple to age 95, that's 30 years. That's 30 years like life, like unemployment. So we have to make sure that whatever the lump sum is that you retire at, that amount of money that you've accumulated, is it enough to get us to where we want to go? And then it's a quality of life, right? So, when we first enter, and you've heard anybody that knows me or has worked with me in the past knows that in our early years of retirement, right? So we'll say from 65 to 75 is what I call the go-go years, right? We have our health, we have our money, we have our desire. We want to go and retire these golden years that we dreamed of. So we're active, and maybe we're spending more, right? And maybe we're maintaining that lifestyle. But then once we get to 75, you know what? I'm now, this year I'm going to be 60. And when I get injured, man, it takes forever to heal. And so, so I can only imagine by the time, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I may not be so active. I may not, be scuba diving or hiking or martial arts or whatever it is. I might be, at that point in time, the grandkids can come visit me, right? So that's what we call the slow go years. And now from 75 to 85, right? That's the slow go. From 85 to 95. Now it's like, listen, man, I ain't going nowhere. Right. And maybe we have to have a caretaker or a custodian. That's if we make it 30 years. So when we're planning and we're talking about how much to save, that's why you can't follow these rules of thumb. Oh, well, you only need 20% of what you lived on while you were working because you won't have a mortgage. And I'm like, really? Really? I worked all my life, and now what you're saying to me is that I want to live on less. So if you want to have some indication of what that might look like, go ahead and live on 20% less than what you're currently living on right now, mortgage or not, and see how comfortable that is. For most people, it's typically not. So, when we look at that amount to save, and this is why, quite often the government is trying to help us to squirrel money away. And they say once you reach age 50, you're eligible to put more money into some of our plans, whether they be 401ks, IRAs, or 403bs, some type of, retirement plan we can actually load up. And that's because when we're younger, we're not thinking, in our 30s, 40s, 50s, we're not really thinking about hanging up our cleats yet. But once we get 55, 60, 65, even 70, we're like, hey, am I going to be able to make it to the finish line? So I'm sorry I went off on a rant there, but I think it's that important. When to retire? I can't tell you when to retire, but that's where it goes back to what I was talking about. Do you know how long you will need to work before you can retire and have enough money to make it to your life expectancy? So when I'm doing classes and I say, all right, by show of hands, what are people's number one fear? And I'll write it on the board when they first come in. And typically it's running out of money in retirement. That is people's biggest fear. Nobody wants to be destitute or have all their money expire. I mean, that is a scary thought for a multitude of reasons, whether it be health, whether it just be bad investment choices, maybe it's taxation risk, inflationary risk. I mean, I can go on and on as to things that could be the cause of that. But that's why you have to be very careful of water cooler advice. Somebody sitting there telling you when to take Social Security, when how to go ahead and make that election on your pension option if you have one versus an annuity stream, right? There's just so many factors into really making sure that your specific circumstances are met for both you and your spouse, so that when can you retire, far be it from me to ever tell anybody, right? But if you're going to retire, what maybe it's not by choice. Maybe you've had a sick one in the family, right? Or maybe you've had a parent that now you have to take care of, or maybe you got laid off, right? It wasn't your choice. So now you're like, it happened to my dad. So I watched, before he died, one of the smartest men I knew who ended up getting let go because they hired a college student for half his salary, and he had a master's in chemistry, and they were paying him. Right. So why, if I can get somebody else to come in for less work, these corporations now typically don't have some of that integrity that some of the older companies used to have when America was first being created and built. So I'm not here to grind an axe. I'm just trying to share with you that that these decisions are really, really important, and we need to have thoughtfulness and mindfulness as we're having it, and having the dialogue not only with an advisor but with your spouse and loved ones. So again, if you want to retire at 58, 55 and you're able to, I love sharing that good news, and I have clients that I've helped to do that. But then now if you decide, hey, listen, you know what, I can only play golf so many times or so many hours a day or so many hours a week, right? I would like to do something else, but maybe it's not as grueling as we were doing for the first 10, 20, 30 years of our career. And so all of these things are factors. So these questions, again, might seem rudimentary, but to me, they're very, very important and relevant. And then lastly, retirement lifestyle. Do you know how much you will need to reduce your future standard of living during retirement if you don't do something different than you're doing today? And that's that reduction that I was talking about. So can you take a haircut on your income, or because taxes go up, maybe your dollar isn't going as far, right? Your accounts that you had, maybe you didn't realize there was a lien on that account, or maybe inflation's eaten into what you were currently thought you had enough of. And what sort of opened my eyes to this was when I've mentioned this on these calls before, back in 2000, before the internet bubble burst, everybody was like, oh, I'm retiring at 55. I bought AOL, it just split 3 times and I'm ready to go. And then all of a sudden, and now they're back to work. So, this is why planning, working with an advisor, with a firm that is proficient in these areas. This is a specialized area. And that's why, professional planning services, everybody that works in my company is very well versed in these conversations. So if we can help, we're fiduciaries, all of us are licensed, we're happy to help. And quite often, it's not going to cost you anything to get your questions answered. So reach out to us and let us know. And then if we're a fit, we can help you out or earn your business. We'll certainly be happy to do so. So this is what I'm going to bring up next week. And again, my background's mechanical engineering. I tend to gravitate towards picture forms and, pipes and valves and fittings to me are second nature, right? Being a plumber in the Navy, taking valves and fittings apart and putting them back together. And I just realized at a very young age, I didn't want to get filthy dirty anymore. But what it did allow me to do is understand how systems work. And so what I'll do next week is take us through some of the conversations and things to be able to work through. So this is the picturesque form. And what I find is most people, about 80% of people, view information visually, right? So if you can take it and we can have a short conversation and get the gist of the idea, then this format works well. If we need to do a deeper dive, that's where spending game comes in, and I can do so. But I find that that's really for my engineers, right? For the intellectual that says, "Hey, can you support the numbers?" And we can certainly do so. But just as we're talking, and then I use this system with Retirement Analyzer. So are we going to run out of money? Do we have a red line? And what things should I be aware of to watch out for, on the horizon to make sure that we're on course? And then I want to invite everybody that's on this call. We are doing a Social Security workshop at Rutgers coming up in April. So we secured that venue. Last year after COVID restrictions were lifted. This is it's centrally located in New Jersey. I'm doing it on a Saturday because I like to do it when the students aren't there. We'll be in the South Building, which I like. It only allows 60 people, which is 30 couples. And if you are not collecting Social Security, you're not certain of how Social Security works, you want to see how using that portion of governmental income in your overall plan works, come learn about it because it is complex, right? Social Security, everything with the government, taxation, government benefits, Medicare, all these areas are just, really intricate. And we're well versed in it. We try and make it simple so you understand. So if this is of interest to you, let us know. We'll lock you up a seat. We'll go from there. And then lastly, I'm going to go ahead and say I wish you all well. Again, Tim, my prayers to Lisa. And again, if we can do anything here, let us know. Thank you all, and I will see you next week.